Good morning, everyone. I'm Marja Matinmikko, and I come from Finland, from the VTT, which is the Technical Research Center of Finland. And I'm very happy to be here, and I'm grateful for the invitation to be here, because I already, in this morning, I have learned a lot about the US situation. The situation in Europe is a bit different. We have a large number of countries. We have a lot of neighboring countries. So the situation is a bit more complicated than here. But I'm very happy to see that there's a lot of activity ongoing here. I think in Europe we can learn a lot from what is happening here. So regarding spectrum occupancy measurements, we are collaborating together with Dennis in a Finland-US collaboration program. And we also have a spectrum occupancy measurement ongoing in Finland. And in Europe, the European regulators, they held a workshop in January regarding spectrum occupancy measurements. And there they expressed quite cautious view about how spectrum occupancy measurements could help regulators. But we have to know that these measurements could be used for multiple purposes. And I think the idea in the workshop in the regulators was to focus on how measurements can help regulators in making spectrum management decisions. There are also other application areas for this kind of monitoring activity. So in general, you will find the presentations of the workshop in the web, so you can go and check what the Europeans think about this topic. But in general, the message from European regulators was that there is no point in making general wideband measurements, because that data is not useful for providing input to the policymakers in Europe. Instead, you should make focused measurements on specific bands and then optimize the parameters of your measurement systems according to that specific usage in that band to identify real information that could help the regulators. And you should use high-quality equipment to do so. Okay, so this is a kind of summary of what is happening in Europe about spectrum occupancy. I think there will be some kind of follow-up for this workshop, but I don't know about the details yet, what will happen after this. Then another thing is about spectrum sharing. So there are a lot of activities ongoing on spectrum sharing models and methodologies all over the world. The US approaches are there, but also in Europe there are mainly two general categories for spectrum sharing approaches at the moment. Collective use of spectrum, which refers to this kind of unlicensed sharing, and then the other one is LSA, the licensed shared access, which is now promoted by the European Commission. They have a definition for that came out just last year. And the idea in this LSA approach is to allow additional authorized licensed users on bands where there is already some kind of incumbent spectrum use. So it would be a kind of controlled spectrum sharing environment where the sharing is done with licensing agreements. And most probably this kind of how it's done in practice, it requires the use of databases for this. So LSA, it's a kind of hot topic right now in Europe, in research, in regulation, in standardization. The European regulators, they have already started to study this. They have published one report already. The ECC has published one report about this LSA framework in general. There is now coming out of a decision about how to use LSA concept specifically in the 2.3 to 2.4 gigahertz band for mobile communication networks to share with other incumbent use. But Europe is a quite complicated place. We all have still the national regulators that decide what systems are to be used in different bands. And for example, the 2.3 to 2.4 gigahertz band, the incumbent use is quite different depending on the country. In Finland, we have PMSC services, mainly wireless cameras, but in other European countries, in France, there is military, and other places, there are different uses. So it's a kind of, still we need some kind of harmonized solutions because the market size, one country in Europe is still quite small, so we need some kind of harmonization at some level. So here is a picture of LSA, for example, of LSA, exactly the Finnish case of LSA, where mobile network operators could share spectrum with the incumbents, the PMSC systems. And in Finland, I'm leading a project consortium that is making the trials and developing this concept too. And we made the world's first trials of this LSA concept last year. And later this week, we will show a new demonstration at the Dicen conference in McLean. So what the basic idea here is that there is a need for some additional mechanisms to implement sharing, some kind of database where we have the information of what bands could be used on a shared basis. And then there needs to be some kind of controlling unit for the mobile network operators to reconfigure their network to operate according to this dynamically varying spectrum availability. But we will show that it's doable. But of course, it depends a lot on what the incumbent spectrum users are, and then how to protect their system. That's an open question. It's not easy to rely on conditions. So some final remarks. European regulators, they are quite cautious about what spectrum measurements can help in spectrum regulation. And then question for me to specifically to look into in our research, we are doing this LSA-based sharing now. It's the hot topic in Europe. And then the question is how the spectrum measurements could help in this kind of licensed sharing approach. I think you have the same question here in the US, how spectrum measurement could help in this three-layer sharing model. And I think that's an open question, and that in Europe, so far, it has not been discussed yet. So there are a lot of opportunities for that. For example, the interference considerations, how to derive the rules for sharing, how to protect the incumbents. Because the LSA approach, it starts with the principle that you have to protect the incumbents that are there, and then you allow additional users who are also protected to some degree. So you guarantee QoS for all in your systems. And then if spectrum measurements would help there, we would be more than happy to take that on board. So that